If you're trying to be a good salesperson, good parent, good leader, good manager, CEO, fill in the blank, composure has got to be step one. In times of emergency, crisis, danger, confusion, we're going to follow the person that is the most clear, concise, so they have the right movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and actual intent. And that's the way to define it.
You talk a lot about body language and how it's important, but most of us don't understand it.
There is no body language for deception. What we're really looking for is behaviors that indicate stress or fear. Blink rate is the most reliable indicator of in-the-moment stress. It's such an unconscious behavior that it becomes super reliable to people like me.
You are a big fan of psychedelics.
I had this brain disease called mesial temporal sclerosis, where my brain tissue is dying. I was having 9 seizures a day. The mushroom stopped every single seizure. I didn't have to take any prescriptions or anything like that. It gave me my life back. This stuff is a miracle. I've been a brainwashing guy for 25 plus years, written papers on it and books and all this stuff. Just stemmed out of my desire to do every single thing that I can to inoculate people from manipulation. Whether it's one person or an entire media organization trying to manipulate you, it's going to set off every alarm bell in your head, and you're going to just start building those walls of sovereignty, emotional sovereignty, or mental sovereignty. That should be step one for everybody watching right now.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs, sharing our vulnerability, overcoming our fears, transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is...
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Chase Hughes, the world's #1 behavior expert, best-selling author, and former U.S. Navy interrogator turned neuroscientist and trainer of elite intelligence professionals. You served 20 years in the military and have since built a global reputation as the go-to authority on behavioral profiling, nonverbal communication, and ethical influence. Your methods are used by U.S. Special Forces, law enforcement agencies, and business leaders worldwide. You're the author of the Ellipsis Manual, the Behavioral Ops Manual, and the upcoming book, Exit, a guide to reclaiming mental autonomy in a world of manipulation and media control. Chase, welcome to London Real.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here.
Look, it's great to have you here. I wanted to ask you right off, we got an education in media and manipulation back in 2020. When we were minding our own business, it was actually April 6, 2020, and we had the second largest YouTube live stream in the world. And based on our calculations, it would have gone on to be the most watched podcast of all time. It would have been beat Elon Musk, Joe Rogan Smoking Weed, which I think was around 10 million. And based on our live numbers, And where we were on our previous, we thought that would get to 20. And 30 minutes later, it was deleted and banned from YouTube. Now, I'd been on there for 9 years. We were in the partner program. I'd been down to the headquarters in London, and this never happened ever before. And my immediate reaction was anger. And I tried to re upload the video. That's kind of how I was like totally, I couldn't compute. And that started our, years long battle for free speech. Soon after that, pretty much all the tech platforms dinged us. We were on the front page of the BBC, which actually put pressure on YouTube to pull us down. And I got an education in the censorship apparatus and also in media manipulation, which is what you talk about. And so maybe my first question, Chase, is do you think that the world learned a lesson about how the media manipulates them through that whole crisis? Or do you think that the more we think we're immune to it, the more susceptible we are?
Yes to both. Let me, if I can break this down.
Yeah.
What I think happened is during this process, I don't think we learned a lesson per se. I personally wouldn't characterize it that way, but I think you're right in saying that something shifted for sure. And what I think happened is we had information weaponization, information control. The dude who invented mRNA was banned from social media for talking about the vaccine that he
Like
like.
Dr. Malone.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had so much stuff like that going on in such a tiny amount of time that it was like a psyops campaign, but they moved a little too fast to where like everyone kind of woke up to it. So what happened is we developed a rapid and contagious mistrust of authority, or of what we perceive or call authority. So it made a lot of people start seeing things and looking for things that they normally wouldn't. And I think it kind of just woke some people up and said, wow, this is really bizarre, very unusual. And I think when I teach influence and persuasion, it kind of goes back to this in that a person, if I go to Best Buy and I buy a new Windows laptop, and I think it's what is it in London? It's Carphone Warehouse or like one of those electronics
Yeah.
stores out there.
Argos is the thing, I think. Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
one of the stores. Yeah.
And if I get a new computer, they're going to try to say, "Hey, do you want this McAfee antivirus? Do you want this anti malware software?" If I'm the kind of guy that goes, "Nah, I don't believe in viruses. I stay away from those. I'm immune to that." I'm more susceptible. I become more susceptible because I view I'm immune. So it almost kind of inoculated a lot of people because we had this realization that, oh, up until this point X, whenever it was for you who's watching, I was bought in and I thought they had my best interests in mind. They were putting me first. My health was first. And up until point X, I was vulnerable. But then we kind of downloaded this mistrust, which is what an anti-malware program is. And I think that level of mistrust, not that it's paranoia, it's just that I trust it less, a little bit less. I think that became a little bit of a wake up call slash antivirus for everybody.
Okay. Interesting. And how much does the fear factor play into it? Because obviously that was everyone was scared. Some would argue that was used as a tool. I still remember the numbers that would show up on the newspapers and on the websites, and that they would just almost paralyze you with the numbers of cases and deaths and all these things. And as you dial up the fear, it seems like you dial down the awareness and the intelligence. Um, how does that work? Also in the work that you do.
Yeah, so let's talk about fear specifically. First, in terms of brainwashing, I've been a brainwashing guy for 25 plus years, written papers on it and books and all this stuff. But let's use fear as an acronym. And if you think of the word fear, that spells out the 4 steps of perfect brainwashing itself. And so the first one is F, and that stands for focus. So the first thing we have to do is capture the focus. And what we're talking about here is the mammalian part of our brain, this lower little animal thing that lives down in here that makes most of our decisions. I need to capture that focus. And the number one way to do that is to subvert expectations and prevent you from predicting your future. So it's like if you think of Caesar Milan, how does the dog whisperer
Yeah.
come in like some
He
celebrities?
shocks them. He sticks them in
Yeah,
the
like he
yeah.
makes a little sound, right?
Right.
Uh, so like some celebrities got this little asshole dog that's biting everybody, and Caesar Milan's got to come in. First thing he does is massively change that dog's environment. So it establishes a massive amount of focus. So anything novel or unexpected generates focus. So the next element in brainwashing is emotion. So now we need something to kind of bring up and down emotions. And this is a hypnotic technique called fractionation, where we're kind of going up and then back down, like a little emotional, a tiny emotional high point, and then we kind of crash back down. These numbers are looking better. There's people getting on ventilators. Oh crap, the ventilators might be doing a whole lot of bad stuff. So we
Okay.
had this roller coaster that happened. So we had we couldn't predict our future. Something unexpected happened, emotional, crazy stuff going on where we also prevents us from looking into the future. Then we get to the A in fear, and this is agitation. And this is changing the environment and changing habits in a new way. So think Caesar Milan. We're going to randomly change all these things that you thought you could expect all the time. You're going to get locked in your house. You're going to do X. You're going to wear a mask. You're going to, whatever it was. So it's focus, emotion, agitation. If I can disrupt the environment, then I create a raw, fresh area for the brain. And just think really quick of the fastest way for us to set goals for ourselves is to, like when people say move your furniture around, convince your brain you're in a new environment, get up at a different time, brush your teeth with your non-dominant hand. All of these things, that's the same process. We're just manipulating the brain in a negative instead of the positive. So focus, emotion, agitation, and what's the final thing there? That's the R in fear, and that's repetition. And then we start again. Something novel happens, something emotional happens, we get agitated, the environment's disrupted, and then it repeats again. So repetition is the core principle of brainwashing. Without that R at the end, we don't have brainwashing, we just have persuasion.
Okay. And that interesting, that fractionation term I've heard used by actually pickup artists back in the day. And I think when they meet a girl, I think they try to dial in all sorts of different emotions and it's not all bad and it's not all good. It's just experiencing all of these things, which just kind of throw you off.
Yeah, and if you watch any good movie, like think about how every horror movie starts. It's the most perfect family vacation in the world. So like this just massive high, and if I can get you to a peak, I can make the valley look way deeper. So
Okay.
that's kind of the theory of fractionation is if I can kind of bring you up and down, not only do you get more used to going down and kind of get more comfortable in those spots, but I can exaggerate how down you go if I bring you up first. So that's the
Okay.
theory behind that. This
Okay.
was invented by a guy named Milton Erickson. He's kind of the grandfather of modern hypnotherapy. He's the guy who got it approved by the American Medical Association.
Okay. All right. And so when you look at some of the things that were happening in 20 and 21 and 22, whether intentional or not, I guess you see that FEAR cycle to the max.
It is definitely a full repetition of that, and it's just nonstop. And we could go on for a long time. So just let me know
Yeah.
wherever you can dig.
The wild thing that I remember during that time, Chase, is that I had really intelligent, successful friends. They always have that analogy that when the tide goes out, you see who's wearing a bathing suit and who's not. And these were men and women with, 7, 8 figures of income, great titles on LinkedIn. And some of these people were at their front door hiding when the delivery came and then were wiping everything off. They went back to drinking, back to bad habits. And like, honestly, I couldn't even recognize them. And yet other people were like, okay, cool. I got it. This is a new normal. I'm going to roll through it. I'm going to, we actually were in a fight. And in some ways, maybe I had it easier than others because I worked every day. I was doing burpees in the stairwell when they took the gym. I'd stopped drinking 5 years earlier. And I was just like, let's go. But like other people, not what you expected. And maybe that's because of, I don't know, this brainwashing technique. I guess maybe it can't be resisted, or maybe it goes to the vulnerabilities of people you wouldn't see normally.
Yeah, and I can tell you exactly why. Exactly why you saw all your friends like that. It's the same reason that we see highly intelligent CEO that's also socially savvy and smart join a cult. Like it's a very similar thing. Let me tell you about a quickly about an experiment that was done, and they redid this in London with Dr. Philip Zimbardo, the Stanford prison experiment guy. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they kind of set up a hotel conference room, like one of those, like a Holiday Inn, kind of a crappy little conference room thing. And there's a circle of chairs. There's 14 people in the room. 13 of them are actors. There's only one real volunteer. So 13 of these people have one set of instructions, and that is do nothing. So they're next to a kitchen or near a kitchen, and suddenly through this locked door under a vent system, this smoke starts billowing into the room. There's obviously a fire is somewhere. The smoke starts coming into the room. Not long after, the smoke detectors are going off, beeping super loud, and this one volunteer, surrounded by these 13 people, is just kind of like looking around, is like, "Am I crazy? Like no one else is doing anything about this," and kind of looking around for a social cue. I need some kind of a cue to do something. And only one guy, out of all the people they tested, only one guy stood up out of his chair. And for anybody listening, I know that my instinct too. I'm thinking what you were thinking. I would never do that, right? We all think, not me, never. So one guy actually stands up out of his chair. He's an artist, and you can see him get up. It's on video. And he goes over there, checks the door, it's locked. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm not waiting around here." He puts his newspaper down, and he walks to the door, and he gets his hand on the door. And one woman says one sentence, and he turns around and sits in his chair. And all she said was, "She told us to wait here, didn't she?" That's it. So at the end of the day, with this little experiment, 100% of people sat in this room long enough to die of asphyxiation. So one of the things that kind of reveals is when people say, that public speaking is the number one fear of human beings, it's actually judgment, like
Okay.
shame and judgment, right? So nobody's scared of speaking because if they did a great job, it would feel great. We're scared of people judging us, especially a large group, even of strangers. So if a person sees three or four or five friends start going down one little pathway, the judgment is a bigger fear than death, which is why public speaking rates higher than death. So if it's powerful enough to override our desire to live, is this fear of judgment, which means I'm gonna kind of go with the crowd. And we have two options when we go with the crowd. Either A, I'm a sheep, I have to believe I'm a sheep, or B, I will somehow rationalize and convince myself that this is the right thing to do. I choose between those two, and guess, I'm sure you can guess what we all choose.
Now, if you have practice going against the crowd, like say you've been canceled or you get the hate on the social, are you less likely to go with it because you recognize it and you're like, okay, this feels crappy, but I've been here before and I better trust my instinct, or does that not necessarily help? Do you think?
I do think it helps because you've been shown evidence. Because like the same, like when we're walking up on stage and our hands are sweaty, you and me speak on stages a lot, which is fine for us. It's not a big deal. But the first time I got on stage, first time you got on stage, it was very different. I'll speak for myself, but I
Yeah.
was really nervous. Like they're all going to know you're faking it. All of this stuff is going on in my head. But now I'm kind of inoculated from experience. But when we go up and we're nervous, that's the same physiological reaction as there's a saber-toothed tiger coming after us. It's the same body reaction. So it's really hardwired unless our brain has a lot of evidence that we're not going to get killed by a tiger, right? So we know we get less and less and less. There's no tigers. We kind of realize no tigers coming. So these people who have faced public criticism multiple times, or they've made an identity out of like, I am the guy who bucks the narrative. I'm the guy who does this. Way more likely because there's more cognitive dissonance if I stay with the crowd because I'm going against what all these people think I am, which is still a little bit of a fear of judgment.
Wow, powerful. And that's why you see sometimes what you would see as successful, put together people making decisions that seem very illogical.
Very true. And it is illogical, but we don't make logical decisions. Our
Right.
that little part that we inherited from our ancestors makes most of our decisions for us. And if you think about this, like for everybody watching, this should help you resonate with other people, not just to say, oh, people are stupid or people are easy to manipulate. This should help you see your neighbors a little more clearly and understand that we've got the same hardware and the same software. All of us have the same stuff going on. And we had a lot of confusion going on with this, and the people who kind of got wrapped up in this stuff and really went down the rabbit hole on both ends of the both ends.
Investment Club. Today, I consider it the best investment that I've ever made. We get 4 projects presented a week by their associated CEOs. Personally, I'm completely blown away by the quality of these projects, and I know of nowhere else where I would be given this same opportunity. Each week that passes, I feel more appreciative of the fact that I'm a member of this group. The vibe was just tremendous. Everybody's on the same wavelength. We just clicked. Everybody listened to each other, enjoyed their company. It was just magical, magical. Take action. Don't take my word for it. Due diligence you need to do. And I really hope that someday down the road I see you in the club. It far exceeded expectations, without question.
Of the spectrum.
Yeah.
It gets into part of who we are. And the moment it becomes identity, we're going to defend it no matter how crazy it gets to one side.
Right. So we make decisions like amygdala-based decisions, emotional-based decisions, and then we justify them with logic later to prove to ourselves that we're rational. But 90-some% of those decisions are not rational.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And when you say we have the same hardware and software, because you sent me a couple of thoughts that you had, it's just to say that, look, we're all the same. And in any moment, we could be influenced in the same way. And so depending on what your circumstances are, what your background is, this is your way of saying have some empathy because we're all really built the same. It's not like I'm better than you or I'm more immune than you. It's just where I was at that time with the information I got. That's probably why I reacted that way. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, so to where we would normally see people as broken or kind of messed up. And what do we do with things that are broken? We want to either fix them or fix the situation. We want to level things out somehow. And I can somehow, if I view the world as broken, I can level the situation out by just thinking I'm superior or thinking someone else is a dipshit or, whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know if you say curse words on a live
That's
broadcast.
fine. It seems very natural for you, so I like it.
Okay. But the other way is like, what if we saw people as reasons? Because we see ourselves as reasons all the time. Like, did this because I
Yeah.
did all this, or I am this way as an adult because of all that stuff that happened back then. So at the end of the day, what if we just extended that little courtesy? You could still see the same behaviors, maybe even still pass some judgment, but we see the reasons. We see a human being as a reason. We see that behavior as a reason. And then we start to understand like that's when you get to the point where you can persuade a person and you can start changing behavior. Like from a psyops perspective, if you're trying to like engineer people to awaken, to wake people up, we have to see the reasons first instead of the judgment.
Okay, powerful. And look, I want to jump into your background because it sounds pretty fascinating and a little dark. And I want to do that. But you also said something that kind of surprised me. You said genuine confidence is a superpower. And I didn't immediately see a connection with, say, confidence and compromising human minds. And I wondered if you could explain that. Recently, I picked up on a couple statements I've seen here and there on Twitter. People always look at, say, Conor McGregor. He was that UFC fighter from Ireland many years ago. He was indestructible. And a lot of fighters tried to mimic his confidence and act like him. But then I always wonder that the brain knows the reality. And so when those don't match up, does that affect your behavior? So I'm kind of curious what you meant by that.
Yeah, so let me start by saying this one thing. Like if you and I went to a piano store right now, just a giant piano store, and I jam my finger down on like the middle key, which is a C on the piano in the store, You can go put your hand on all the strings on all these pianos around the entire store, but the moment that your finger touched the C string on any other piano, it's vibrating. So that little C string on that one piano vibrates all the other pianos. So when it comes to human behavior, where we speak from is where we speak to in other people. So if I'm speaking from a C string, I'm going to vibrate that C string in other people. If I'm speaking from inauthenticity or incongruence or performance, like that confidence that other people are mimicking with Conor McGregor, I'm speaking to a performance-based mindset in someone else, a performance-based thought. It's not necessarily that we feel that and we can like register that in a spreadsheet in our head, but what we do feel is like everything looks great on the surface, but something's off. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but something's not right about the situation. We get a gut feeling or an intuition. And when it comes to confidence, like true confidence, it is never performative, and confidence has nothing to do with other people. So our entire world, our society is obsessed with hierarchy and status, especially today. And well, maybe last 400 years, 500 years. So this hierarchy and status. So confidence, people tend to look at other people to see if they have permission to feel confident, or if I'm faking confidence, that means I have to pretend like I'm over other people. And I firmly believe confidence is 100% about what's in here and not our exterior. And that sounds kind of like some self-help bumper sticker type of crap. But what I'm truly saying is, let's say you have a YouTube channel. If all the great comments make you feel great about yourself, and all that means all the bad ones have the same exact entryway because I'm defining who I am. I'm defining what I'm allowed to do in this lifetime by something outside of myself. So people say I'm shy, I'm timid, I can't be confident. You can absolutely be confident. And the biggest shortcut to this, and this is kind of going into this Conor McGregor thing that you were talking about, is a willingness, and this goes all the way back to this fear of judgment, is am I fully willing to face social injury? And that is kind of a good measure. Am I comfortable in what's going on? And am I just open to facing some kind of social injury or social wound in this interaction? And that's truly what real confidence is.
Okay. So that's how you define it. I'm willing to accept a social wound to be myself, or whatever I do, I'm willing to accept that because ultimately I judge myself.
Exactly. And I define
Right.
myself. Everything's all me.
And we're naturally attracted to that as humans because that's typically the person that will lead us out of danger, into food, into all these things. I'm guessing why that hierarchy is so important for us.
It is critically important. And in times of emergency, crisis, danger, confusion, we're not going to follow the guy with the best pitch or the best posture or the guy with like the whitest teeth. We're going to follow the most followable person. And that's the way to define it. The person that is the most clear, concise, so they have the right movement, appearance, confidence, connection, or like intent on what they're doing, and actual intent. So like we can see their how without them saying what their how is. Like during an airplane crash, let's say people survive. The person who's taking charge is the most followable person.
Okay. Now, can someone fake it until they make it with that confidence? I mean, in this day of digital media, they put the suit on and they come out there and they got the advisors behind them. And I mean, actually, I think Trump is very confident, but I'm just thinking of the way he kind of displays himself and he's always on point and presentable. And it feels like some people kind of did that in 2020 and then it broke down later. But can you kind of fool some of the people some of the time?
I definitely think you can.
Okay.
And I think a lot of times we fall into that. Like we look at the David Koreshes and the Charles Mansons of the world, and if you just imagine a pendulum shape. So like we have a left and a right side. So on this side we have collapse. On this side it's like I have to shrink. I'm going to get small to make other people more comfortable. I'm going to shrink down how much money I ask for, my presence in a restaurant. It's shrinking in multiple ways. And on the other spectrum of this, we have posturing. So the posturing is I'm going to exaggerate behavior, which is performative. So anything performative is lacking real confidence. So we have this kind of performative bravado. I'm sticking the chest out. I'm speaking louder than normal. My hand movements are crazy, trying to take up space. You're talking about pickup. There's a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff in there.
Yeah.
This and that's posturing. But in the center of this pendulum between those two, we have something called composure. And that is what makes someone truly followable. Is when we get to that, like what I call like Andy Griffith is the bar none example of what this composure thing is. If you've ever watched the Andy Griffith show, it's an older show,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Black and white, right?
yeah. And then we have his partner, Barney Fife. And Barney Fife is a beautiful example of posturing and collapse on both sides. He'll kind of vacillate between these two. And somebody who lives their life as kind of a collapsing doormat, when they want to solve their problem, they don't look to the middle. They're looking all the way over there and saying, that's the solution. This posturing is the solution to my problem. I'm just going to overdo everything. And someone who's postured way too long and then got smacked down for it, they look way over here to the solution to their problem instead of the center, which is composure. And I would say that composure is just the mental stillness and being non-performative and not kind of having a mask. So you smile because you're happy instead of I'm using a smile or a line as a tool to make you see me a certain way.
Yeah, that's powerful. It's interesting because of my show, I've been around a lot of, I guess, high level people, that maybe by definition have some confidence. And it's interesting watching them, behind the scenes and then also on camera and to seeing the way they react to things. I always tell people it's when you get to that high level of people, it's not what they do, it's what they don't do. And yeah, the composure is something, yeah, I think that makes a great leader where you're just composed. I mean, you could argue Trump has shown a lot of composure over the past 12 to 18 months and just kept going and I guess didn't react. It's interesting that you use that word composure. I guess it goes along, it's a part of the ultimate bit of confidence.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Okay. I also kind of noticed it in myself as I get older and as I feel like I'm getting a better leader, I can just try to stay composed. Or I have two little boys. And so, leadership is on 24/7. So when something crazy happens, I'm like, okay, let's stay composed here. And let's not regret something. And let's also show them that we're composed. Because I think we all know the analogy. The person that's yelling and screaming and swearing has less power than the person getting that. Although in that Barney Fife thing, maybe we've been taught that that's the alpha, that's the person. But great leaders don't yell, scream, and bark orders and swear because when you do that, it's a sign you've lost power and now you're going to desperate measures, right?
Absolutely. That's a great example too. And my daughter is 17 now, 18 now. And when she was 4, I think she had more composure than me. And I was a chief in the military. I think she's maybe an old soul or whatever, whatever that means. But I think she just kind of grew up and started out with more composure than me. So she, even like at the age of 6, was like such a shining example of composure to me. And I've never seen a kid with that. So it's a rare thing to see. But the cool thing is it's not an inborn trait. It's something we can all learn and we can all cultivate. If you're trying to start a movement, you're trying to be a good salesperson, good parent, good leader, good manager, CEO, fill in the blank. That composure has got to be step one. Like, how can I bring myself to that center line so I can kind of monitor in my head? I can be hyper aware of when I start going into the collapse or I start moving into that little posturing behavior.
So we were super lucky to have Jocko Willink on the show really early, like 9 years ago, 2016. He had actually just appeared on Tim Ferriss and then was just on Rogan. And I reached out and he came to London and there he was. And he made a real impression on me. And I ended up getting his book series called The Warrior Kid. And so this is something that I read to my boys, I mean, pretty much every night for the past 4 years. There's like 5 books. And a lot of the warrior kid ethos is detach, and control your emotions. And this is something he's constantly talking about. And it's something we constantly talk about as well as just a way of kind of just seeing if we can manage it. And so, I remember one time where one of my boys, Damon, was freaking out and Caden yelled across the room, detach, detach. I would love to say that happens every week, but it doesn't. But
That's
I think
fantastic.
we're trying to instill some of that stuff. And yeah, those books are pretty, they're pretty cool resource to have that came from Jocko and his extreme ownership and the leadership lessons he learned in the military as well. So yeah, I think that could be pretty powerful. Have you heard of those books?
I haven't, but I'm kind of like covertly writing them down here under the
Okay,
under the
cool.
screen. I'm gonna get some.
They actually made a Hollywood movie, Warrior Kid. It's coming out in December. It's got some big actors in it as well. So we're pretty excited about that over here. You mentioned David Koresh and Charles Manson, and I was wondering if we could maybe talk about some of these leaders and figure out what we can learn from them and maybe learn about ourselves. I actually watched the Waco, Texas documentary on Netflix. I don't know if you watched it like a year ago. It's like 6 or 7 part series. I was actually, I think, in high school when that happened, and I remember seeing the video, and it was like, what the hell's going on there? But pretty fascinating to go deep into that documentary and find out what's going on. And one of the things I just remembered is that they had the phone calls to David with the ATF agents and the FBI or whoever the hell else was there. And that dude is maximum confident. Like he's like, we're here. He's like, you know what? Bring it. Like, we're not going anywhere. Like, we are going, we're going to heaven or whatever. He was just, and just the tone of his voice. And this is after the, maybe the tanks came at the end, but this is after, you're getting surrounded. There are rounds coming in. It's getting hairy. And I was always surprised, or I noticed his confidence. He really was assured in his mission, I guess, until the end. And I guess everybody else there was assured of him too. I don't know. Did I notice something there? Is this why they're good at what they do? Because they actually believe it? Or what can we learn from some of these cult leaders? I guess anything can be called a cult.
So let's break this down from a behavioral psychology perspective. So first we have like a sense of purpose and drive. So this was the last thing I said earlier. We have that movement, appearance, confidence, connection, and intent. Those are the five little tripwires that we see in other people that say, I need to follow that person. So that drive, that intent, and that we can see the why. So when a person has a real purpose, not like I've made some T-shirts out of this catchphrase kind of a thing, some real purpose in their life, then they get down to the next phase of this, which is if the purpose is very important, I'm willing to accept some injury for this. The injury is okay. So, like, Brian, if you and I are talking and we're in a negotiation, if I need less from you than you need from me, in almost any relationship, the person who needs less is in charge. So, in situations like this, and when in conflict situations, the person who needs less is typically more willing to be injured, more willing to suffer a financial loss if it's a negotiation or whatever it is. This willingness either comes from purpose, maybe some schizophrenia coming in there, but purpose can definitely do that stuff. And the willingness to be injured means that I'm not concerned with performing or how you're perceiving me. So the willingness to be injured in pursuit of the purpose leads down to this composure. And that's why, like, they would call him, I've listened to these tapes, they'd call him on the phone, and it's like he was kind of talking down this nervous hostage negotiator.
Yeah.
He was the calm one. He needed less than they needed from him. And typically those are the two factors of what decides who wins an interaction. A, the person who needs less from the other person, and B, the person who reacts to the other person the least, who's the most non-reactive person. And those are the traits, whether it's the Manson or the Koresh, it leads down from that passion, willingness to be injured, and it's typically social injury in today's world. And that leads to a composure, and the composure leads to I'm not seeking something from you, and I'm not reacting, or you're reacting to me more than I'm reacting to you.
Okay. And so in those two cases of Manson and Koresh, they were so sold on their vision They attracted people around them that maybe didn't have a vision, wanted a vision, and then wanted to come along with their vision, and then therefore started to compromise themselves or make choices maybe that weren't in their physical best interests.
What the London Real Investment Club actually does for you, it gives you the keys to open that door to the inside deals. In the last 3 weeks, I've participated in 3 incredible deals: a layer 2 Bitcoin protocol, an incredible AI protocol. The deal flow is beyond what I expected. I don't think I've ever seen a model like this that just gives average folks the opportunity to be behind the deals. And that's exactly what we've done. Not only that, you get to hang out with Brian Rose every week. And for me, that was huge because I look at Brian as somebody who's not only an expert in the space, and I think is on the leading edge, but just the leading edge of thought with London Real and the work he's doing there. To anyone who's taking a serious look at this, I know it's a big decision. It was a big decision for me and my family, and it is one of the best decisions I've ever made. So I wish you all the best and hope you come join us.
Because they were now the more reacting person or the person that wanted to be a part of something. Is that kind of what happens there?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've spent my life studying interrogation and stuff, and interrogation is a way of talking someone into doing something that's probably not in their best interest. So I spent time with cult recruiters out in California. I spent time with a lot of different people who did jobs like this, that talked people into weird stuff. And the funny thing is that there's no intelligence barrier. You're not going to get you're not going to say like I'm only going to get people with an IQ under 95 into this cult. There are senior executives who super smart, like Ivy League graduate people that join these things. So typically what happens is there's an introductory identity agreement. So let's say let's say I'm talking you into joining a cult, if you don't mind us kind of going back and forth here.
Scott, I need a new hobby. Let's go.
All right. So you're okay with the barcode tattoo a little bit later, I'm assuming.
Oh man.
So here's how these people do this, and they want somebody. Eventually, somebody's going to be doing some crazy, weird stuff down the line. So initially, when this approach is made, it's just an agreement. I get you to make an agreement about identity. So let's say we start talking, and the only words out of my mouth are, there's so many people in the world who are just living in this little prison, so scared about what other people think of them. And you nodded your head. So I've got you to agree that you're not one of those people within about 10 seconds.
Okay.
So now I've built a little hallway of cognitive dissonance. So now that I've got you to agree to one thing, I'll do a few more things in the conversation to start narrowing that hallway down to where there's just one little solution at the end of it.
Will most people agree to that, or not always? And if I don't agree, then you use a different tack.
I think most people, 99% of people will agree.
Okay, but it's still a yes ladder that takes me down your primrose path.
Yeah. And maybe just 2 minutes later in the conversation, I might say something like, well, Brian, I really appreciate talking to you, man. I had social anxiety growing up. As a kid, how did you, have you always been this open with other people, or is this something you learned? The moment that you answer that question, then you've made an agreement not to shun people who fear other people's opinions. And now you're giving me advice or answering on how you're so open. So I'm kind of like now opening your mind up to different possibilities. So it is a slippery slope that feels like it might be a compliment here, a compliment there.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.